I'm almost there. Is it still just us?
Is this where I'm supposed to be?
I think so.
Okay. They said something in the email about a separate link, so I wasn't sure. Where are you?
Me? I'm in Berlin, Germany.
Oh wow. How
And where
cool.
are you?
I'm in Maine, United States.
Nice.
So what time is it there? Pretty late?
It's 11. So pretty late, but
Yeah.
it's all right. Not past my bedtime yet, so. Yeah, I think we've got all different time zones on this call. So I think Anton, it's going to be like 6 a.m. for him or something like that. It's really very brave.
Wow.
Yeah.
Where's he?
He's in Korea.
Oh wow. Cool.
Oh wait, so I think it's streaming here. I just wanna.
So is this a different kind of call, like where you don't see the audience?
Yeah, so far. And then we'll let everyone in right at 5. I'm trying to stream this over to YouTube and I'm struggling here. God dang it.
Hello.
Hi there.
Everyone with books behind them. Maybe I should move around. My books are in the other corner. Well, how do I do that?
Okay.
Okay, there you go. Look at that. I have books too. Okay.
Yes.
And we all have white bookshelves.
Yeah.
Yes.
IKEA.
Mm-hmm.
That's where mine are from.
Mine are, yeah.
They don't have IKEA where I live.
Kind of lucky you, I gotta
Yeah.
say. Yeah. They haven't taken over yet.
Well, I just live too far in a rural area.
Where are you?
I'm in the middle of Maine in the United States.
Cool. I'm in St. Louis, also in
Oh.
the United States. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And Mui, I've read you're in Berlin.
I am. Yep.
Very cool.
Bruna, I heard you speak with Anton the other day, and Paige and Jeremy. Was great. It's great.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for tuning in. That was a lot of fun. Good
Yeah,
to be with. Go
I
ahead.
watched the recording because it was too late my time, that one.
Yeah, I know. The time difference kind of sucks for everybody. I think Anton today will be joining in really early in the morning, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Jennifer, where in Maine are you?
I'm in Orono, which is it's kind of near Bangor,
Okay. Yeah.
sort of right in the middle.
Mhm.
So you all know each other?
Actually, not really, but I've just seen her speak that one time, so I'm like pretending. I'm like, Bruna. No, we should be meeting.
Only from reading each other. Like
Exactly.
I've seen your stuff and
Same.
yeah, but no, we've never met. I've also never met Anton, but we did one event together before.
I've emailed Anton, and so I feel like I Twitter know him and like know each other's work. But I don't actually have ever met him, so I don't think any of us have met each other.
Yeah, I mean, and Anton lives in Korea, and I live in Missouri, so the odds of us meeting is like really slim.
You teach in St. Louis?
I teach online. I live in St. Louis for completely random reasons.
Okay.
I was in Iowa after living in New York, and I got used to that Midwestern lifestyle, like big houses, health insurance. So I never went back to the East Coast. I kind of stayed in the Midwest, and my boyfriend teaches at Washington University in St. Louis, but I do not. I teach online, so it doesn't matter where I am really, and I work from home.
Oh, okay. My publisher is in St. Louis.
Dorothy?
No, not Dorothy. Flood.
Oh, cool. Yeah,
Yeah, I
there's
know.
some
I mean, I know
people.
Dorothy and love Dorothy, and I know Danielle a little bit.
Mhm.
But no,
Yeah.
my publisher is Devin Johnson. He teaches at St. Louis University.
I actually don't have any connection to any of the St. Louis publishing things. All my writing and translation life is in New York. So, but I kind of like keeping the distance in a way. I'm sure, I mean, being in Maine, you get it. It's nice to be slightly outside of it.
I like St. Louis though.
Yeah, it's okay.
That's good museums, good art museums.
Good museums, yes. What else? It's good for driving. It's good for leaving it too.
It seems like it. I feel like sometimes there's so much space there that they should a bunch of people should move there.
It's the reason why I've stayed. It's really cheap. I have a 2-bedroom and an office with a door, and I pay half as much as I paid for my apartment in Jersey City. I didn't even live in Manhattan or anything. So
All right, guys,
it's real nice.
we better get started here. I think it's 5 somehow.
Yeah.
Or at
I'm
least
always
we'll
chatty.
let
Sorry.
people in. We can always keep chatting.
Yeah. Hello, Todd and Sam.
Hey,
Hi,
sorry, I
everyone.
was like scrambling to get everything up on
No, no,
YouTube,
no.
but we're all good now.
Yeah, you're fine.
You're in New York, right, Todd?
I am. I'm over in Brooklyn. Okay, so let's give people a minute here, and Anton obviously a minute. He's probably waking up at 5 in the morning.
God, the poor thing.
It's 6, but he probably had to wake up at 5.
Yeah.
Oh, hi, Sam.
And yeah, feel free to chat too with everybody. I think you should be able to. I don't know
Hi,
anymore
Nick.
these days. Let's make sure. Sometimes all righty. Let's give Anton a minute here and we'll hang out. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Hello, participants. We can't see you, but we feel your presence.
Does everybody like my whiteboard background? I picked a good, nice, plain and uninteresting place to sit. So
Yeah, I appreciate that.
yeah, no books, just a glare that gets in the way.
I actually moved my camera around after I saw Jennifer in movie. I'm like, I want to look smart. So I moved my camera around.
Yeah, I guess this is like the desk or the shelves that are in my bedroom, and it's all Italian. So I think people will get misconstrued that I only read Italian books. It's not true.
Strictly Italian.
Sam, you look very scholarly with your whiteboard.
Wow. Is it a nice counterpoint to my yard sale Hawaiian shirt?
I mean, I wouldn't know that about your shirt. So
Yeah, that's true. It's not, yeah. Yeah, I'm at a co-working space just down the street from my house. In case
Yeah, it has
anyone.
slight echo.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Are you
That's
right? I don't mean that you're echoing. I mean the room sounds kind of hollow.
oh, like I'm in like a stairwell or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense. It sounds that way to me too, actually. So I guess it's reproducing the effect. It's like you're really here.
We've got some chat going here.
Yeah. Well, we can always count on Nick Glastonbury to bring the party, right, Nick?
All right, so maybe we should get started. And I think Anton, we were gonna have Anton read, second or third anyway. So
No, we can have him go third if it comes to that. So
yeah, let's do this.
well,
Dan, do you want to tell the folks a little bit about?
yeah, I can kind of begin, and then I'll introduce our first reader as well. So hi everybody, thanks for coming, thanks for showing up. Gosh, I think this is the 5th time that we've done this over Zoom. But Todd and I originally met at the Breadloaf Translators Conference in 2015 and met some other writer translators there as well. Got the idea to do a reading series after finding out that we lived both near each other and near Molasses Books in Brooklyn, which is our usual venue for the event. The ethos of the event is to give writers who also translate a place to be both things at once rather than sort of apologizing for one or the other, depending on the scenario. And also just to normalize the practice of being a writer who translates, even just seeing the word writer translator right out there in the world. We're almost at 6 years. I guess in July we'll hit our 6-year mark. So we're really excited to be, crazy, right? Really excited to be continuing this. I've enjoyed watching Todd mellow with age and grow his hair out and his beard. Anyway, so please don't hesitate to reach out, by the way, anyone watching or people have recommendations about readers. We're always looking for folks to read for the series. So we have a website, usandthemreading.com, and the format for those of you who are new to the series is basically every 3 months we'll do an event, and then this isn't the case for the last year, but we also sort of do pop-ups maybe at like a conference or something else like that. So Todd, you have anything to add before we begin?
Yeah, so just logistically, assuming we're going to have 4 readers here, everyone's going to share their work, and that may be writing and translation. It may be just translation. It may be just original work, and they'll give you a heads up on who they're reading from and what they're reading. So that will be your cue. Definitely take that from them. So anything else to go? I think that was all I had to add. And hopefully we'll get Anton in here soon.
Great. Well, I guess without further ado, we'll start in with our first reader. Poet, essayist, and translator Jennifer Moxley is the author of 7 books of poetry, a book of essays, and a memoir. Her 2014 book, The Open Secret, was awarded the William Carlos Williams Award for the Poetry Society of America. It was also the finalist for the Kingsley Tufts. She's translated 3 full-length books from the French, Anne Portugal's Absolute Bob, and Jacqueline Rousset's Sleep's Powers and the Translation Begins. Her essay comparing 3 different translations of Stéphane Mallarmé's sonnet ENXY was published in the book called Into English from Grey Wolf in 2017. She teaches poetry and poetics at the University of Maine in Orono. Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you, Sam and Todd. I'm excited to be part of this and to hear the work of my co-participants. I'm going to just read from a translation that I've been working on this spring. It's a translation of a poet from Quebec named Marie Huguet, but it's not her poetry. It's a journal that she kept. Here is a copy of the journal. This is her. That was published in 2005 posthumously. Marie Huguet was active in the late 70s, early 80s. She died in 1981 at the age of 26 from bone cancer. So she had this intense career. She published 4 books and kept this journal, but then she died quite young. And the journal, she starts after she gets cancer in 1977, and she has her leg amputated. And then she falls in love with her doctor. So the journal is a lot about this desire for this doctor, and as well as her poetry and her questions about how to live a meaningful life. So I'm just going to go ahead. I've taken selections from the 7th notebook of the journal, which starts in 1980, January 1980. So this is 3 years after she had her initial diagnosis, and she thought she was in remission, but then in 1980, the cancer comes back into her lung. So I've taken some selections from this, and they're not sequential, but hopefully they have a kind of logic to them. All right, how's the sound? Is it okay? All right. So this is Marie Huguet. When I awoke this morning, the sky was a blue expanse across which floated mounds of gold, orange, and rose. Then little by little, it was overrun by heavy white clouds, followed by snow and wind, a storm. I got up feeling blessed, as I often do when traveling, but lost that feeling the moment the sky changed. It's probably just because I am young, this drunken feeling, or maybe it comes from some precious mechanism wired into our being to help us get up. I was filled with intimate, delicate, and delicious sensations. It was one of those moments of perfect illusion which give my life a feeling of imminence, a moment when everything in the world seems clearly defined and carries the weight of lived experience. My soul becomes part of everything I see, feel, touch, and anticipate. Images culled from conversation, films, and books rush into me and suddenly become mine. I know that everything is threatened by destruction and meaninglessness, that chaos menaces our world, and that nature, behind a facade of eternal harmony, conceals plagues and disequilibrium. I know that erosion is moving everything in nature toward irreversible extinction, or at least toward the disappearance of the calm the calm divinity we've come to know. But on these routine mornings, my mind sees only the beauty, and even chaos seems beneficial. I constantly gravitate toward pictures of sea, sun, plants, sand. I always see myself leaning against a white wall where the softness of the light intensifies. It neither burns nor blinds, but like a wave, floods my body with a primal sense of well-being. Listening to Ernest Chauson's poem, I agree with his thought that death is not as frightening as the idea of dying without having said and done what you hope to say and do. This is the obsession that plagued me when I was in the hospital, and it has not left me. The fear that death would interrupt the dark work of my poetry, that a phrase would show up and resistant to the harmony I'm haunted by, time would run out before I could cross its threshold. I would remain unfinished. Time seems to move far too quickly now. I feel a constant sadness at the thought of all I might not have time to write. But I'm not conflating quantity with quality. It's with quality that I want to conquer time. She inserts little poems in, and this is one of those. In the house, no one dreams of contradicting the father. Outside, the glimmering poplars gently sway. I think of the coated rustling of the bees, of the clouds' effusions, how life might not know how to feed us. All thrills will follow us. February 22nd, 1980. 3 days ago, Paul informed me that I have a cancerous tumor in my lung. He's confident we can beat it. Suddenly, everything seems so precious and fragile. Suddenly, everything seemed to be rushing toward me without ever coming close. Paul's handsome face, the softness of the air, the bustle of the streets. I walked for a long time by myself, bursting with overflowing love and growing fear. The shock had paralyzed me. No poems were left to numb my pain, even though I had wanted to keep writing in the hope that I might secure some permanence in this world. I understood that for everyone else, I was an unknown and unremarkable writer, and I asked myself, will I live long enough to write and make them all blush, plow it all through the fields of my words, move them out of their circle of shadows? Enough time also to love, even those who despise me, to know where my texts will end up. Then in a flash, being popular or unpopular seemed completely pointless, and all that counted was time and codifying my life in the immutable analogy of words. Living is as much about receiving as giving. How I had wanted to be taught inexpressible form. Then the shock hit me at a deeper level, paralyzing all thought, all hope or desire. I am not in a film where, following the death of one of the characters, things continue on as before. After me, there will be nothing more because I am both the character and the film. After me, no one will continue the dialogue. There will be nothing because I will no longer be there to note the obvious. My death will be my only eternity, my absence my only infinity. Everything that I say, everything that I write will come to a stop. Only my silence will continue without end. It will not even culminate in a cry or a sigh. It won't resemble a dying star, the disappearance of which unleashes a chain of events. It will be like an emergent thought engulfed by the void, which leaves no trace, not even a memory of the thought's first coming into being. I often have this strange impression of having experienced a very specific kind of happiness somewhere in some specific place. I feel a shock or have a flash and feel that I can remember it. But the moment this very gentle, very clear, very oceanic feeling swims up, words escape me. One image looks a bit like Brazil. Another might be from a movie, yet the shape flees, evades all telling. I feel a strong desire to write a poem, but the form is still fuzzy, still distant from my wishes, so unreal, so unremarkable. I want the poem to spring up casually and gracefully, to be a polished stone delivered up quickly in an almost pulse-like rhythm, a rhythm that resounds in many directions, yet never breaks. But this poem turns in circles. The lyricism rings false. The idea evaporates. The sensation grows dimmer and dimmer. This poem is still far off, and yet, feeling pressed by time, I long for it, for its freedom, its extravagance, its fecundity. How can I give the poem what I don't have? Perhaps I hope that the word can transform my world. If I turn to face myself, I find only the desire to love and to live. Light years separate us, my love. From the other side of the planet, I think about you. There's an unresolved remainder that keeps circling back, cyclical, pathetic, firm, holding the stars we extinguished in its hands. A single glance can hold so many sighs. There is so much infinity in death. Death has large wings. I am certain that the death do not forget. I feel sure there's no oblivion, that the earth consumes but never forgets. One day, all we have deeply loved will return to us. So much expands that not even a single moment is lost. Uge also had a habit of inserting letters that she wrote into her journal. So she would write a letter to somebody, but then she'd copy that letter into her journal. So I'm going to finish with one of those. This is a letter to her friend Yvette. I have neglected to write, knowing that my letters would probably have a rather ugly tone. Going out, seeing people, talking and laughing, I can manage, but in a letter, I cannot lie. The very fact of writing ties me to the real. Today, after receiving your flowers and your friendly note, and after that beautiful letter filled with March colors, I'm making an effort to write you out of tenderness and gratitude. How do you manage to be so calm? For my sake, anxiety eats at my soul as the disease does my body. I'm not sure whether I'm dying from cancer or from too forcefully wanting my dream life to penetrate my reality. In September, the person I'm in love with returned only to go away again, leaving me even more defenseless than before, more speechless, more stunned. A mediocre story, a sentimental melodrama from which I can't find relief. Then I worked a lot on my poetry, my university classes. I regained my energy, trying to forget about his absence. Physical absence, always the worst. I have worked a lot this fall and winter. I began a new volume of poems in support of which I received a prestigious grant. Then in February, the terrible news that my disease had come back, this time in my lung. I didn't have adequate moral fortitude, and the prospect of having to wage these new battles seemed impossible to face. The treatments, the operation, the physical depletion, once again, I felt like I was suffocating. My illness put me in contact with him again, because alas, the man who has such a hold on my heart is the same who treats my illness. So love and death are intertwined in the same delirium. My story is stupid. I make moves, but I no longer believe in what I'm doing. Sometimes I think about what you wrote to me. Let time take care of things. Meanwhile, the hours fall heavily in my memory like metal tears. 3 years ago, I was carefree. In a single blow, my life was destroyed. At the same time, I came to know two terrible things from which we probably can't recover: passion and death. On the one hand, my body experienced real joy, satisfaction, and also hunger for the first time. On the other, it learned about suffering, mutilation, weakness. For 3 years, my life has felt unreal, too exhilarated to be tangible, concrete. As if placed on the edge of a cliff, what hope remains to keep me from slipping? So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Jennifer. That was really wonderful. So many deep thoughts just about writing itself. I'm like, kept thinking about other things. It was really nice, beautiful. Alrighty, let's keep moving here. Our next reader is Mui Pupoksaku. She is a lawyer turned translator, there might be a need for another series for lawyer translator, with a special interest in contemporary Thai literature. Her translations include 3 story collections, The Sad Part Was and Moving Parts, both by Prabda Yoon, and Arid Dreams by Dwanwad Pimwana. We have a visual there from Sam. She's also the translator of Pimwana's novel, Bright. She is currently translating a novel by Sane Sang-suk, which I think we might hear some of, I don't know. She's a native of Bangkok who lived in the US for 2 decades and is now in Berlin. So thank you for joining us from afar, Mui.
Thank you for having us. I'm really glad to be here. I never thought I'd be able to join this reading series because I'm not US based, so this is very special. So tonight I will be reading from the Sane Sang-suk novel that I'm working on, and I'll do a little show and tell. This is the Thai cover. In Thai, it's called Chao Karagate, but my working English title for it is The Understory. So I'll just say a little bit about the author. Sane Sang-suk is a contemporary author. He was just made a national artist a few years ago, so I guess it's fair to say that he's sort of part of the old guard now. He's in his 60s. The Bangkok Post described him as stylistically modernist, but thematically magic realist, which is a fair generalization, I think. This book was published in 2003, but it made me really happy that this is his favorite book of mine, and it's also his favorite book that he's written. And the novel's a story within a story. Actually, it's many stories within the story, and the frame story, which is the part I'll be reading from, is set in 1967, but most of it happens around the turn of the 20th century. Like the main part of the novel is the protagonist's life story, which is told in first person, but I'm going to read for you the frame story. So here goes. The Understory by Sane Sang-suk. Often in the afternoon, after school let out and the children were home, they would quietly assemble. Their entire world consisted only of the village of Pragnam Dang with its measly 20 dwellings, of the vast verdant paddy fields at the moment waterlogged, and of the sky with its complete apathy toward the conditions and happenings in the world down below. Because the village had a dearth of activities they could divert themselves with, some of the children liked to pretend to be Luang Por Tien and tell his stories, the one about his encounter with the elephants and others. And they did so well in imitating his voice, his words, his gestures. They copied Luang Por Tien wholesale, his mannerism when he sipped his tea or his bale juice, the raspy sound he made when he cleared his throat, the way he paused intermittently to scan his audience, passing his eyes over their faces one by one. And they also employed his method of leaving a story hanging at a nail biter, or at a head scratcher, or at a major plot twist, and absolutely refusing to continue until his listeners implored him to. The child impersonating Luang Por Tien would begin a story, and the rest would focus their attention on him or her and occasionally interrupt with such comments as, "No, that's not how it went. When Luang Por Tien got to that point in the story, he actually coughed a dry cough, and then while hunched over, coughed hard 2 or 3 more times." Or, "No, that's when he got to that point, he actually worded it in such and such a way." Or, When he got to that point, he actually paused and laughed to himself about something. Or when he got to that point, he actually looked up at the sky as he talked, and his voice became quieter and hoarse, and his eyes welled up. The children all played their parts to help fill in the gaps until they were satisfied the story was whole, and to trim the extras until they were satisfied the story was polished. Each of them was determined to safeguard the phrasings, form, and flow of Luang Por Tien's original stories, all of them insisting to Pratt and Shun. The girl expressly assigned the task that she must record all of it down so they would have it preserved in writing. All of this the children did without allowing Luang Por Tien or any of the other adults to become privy to it, because they feared that Luang Por Tien wouldn't understand, feared that if he were to catch wind of it, it might trouble him, and he might become bashful and refuse to tell them another story again, no matter how much they might beg and plead. And he might say something like, "Since you all can tell my story so darn well on your own, why is it that I should waste my time telling them to you again?" Luang Por Tien had an endless number of tales to tell. Some of his tales were funny, some sad, some spooky, and many a time they were full of magic spells and supernatural powers. Nearly all of them were genuinely meant as feathery light entertainment, and nearly none of them had a moral to them. The story about the time during his pilgrimage walk to India when he had that close encounter with the herd of wild elephants, the children had heard that one before and wanted to hear it again. The story about the time early in his days as a pilgrim monk when, on one shivery winter night, a king cobra the length of 12 forearms slithered in and slept next to him. The children heard that one before too and wanted to hear it again. The story about the time during one of his pilgrimages when he ventured into a secluded mountain range far distant to the west and came upon a large cave full of dripping and drooping stalactites and stalagmites in unusual shapes and colors, no two the same. And it was cold and damp and silent inside, which he found conducive to meditation and prayers. And that cave turned out to be full of gems and jewels and gold ornaments, which must have meant that he had stumbled upon a treasure trove belonging to one provincial ruler or another, or one monarch or another, whom enemies had defeated in battle, or whom some kind of disaster had befallen, forcing him to flee his own domain and take these precious items with him to be cached. And he might have killed somebody, perhaps a courtier or a slave, so that the soul of the dead would guard and protect the trove, all of which might have happened in an era long begone, back when there were still local lords and wars. And in that cave, Luang Por Tien discovered the skeletons of 4 pilgrim monks, some of them long dead, some only recently so, their remains donning worn, torn, tattered monks' robes. How they died was an enigma to him. All 4 of their alms bowls were filled to the brim with gems and jewels. So perhaps they'd been too weak-willed and had fallen prey to avarice, forgetting that their chosen life was the life of mendicants. So they were killed by the soul guarding the treasure trove. That story too, the children had heard before and wanted to hear again. The story about the time during his pilgrimage when he encountered an ascetic robed in white who was 150 years old, but who could pass for a lad of 25 because he drank an elixir of life, and who, because he took a liking to Luang Por Tien, offered to share some of his magic potion with Luang Por Tien, and also generously offered to give Luang Por Tien the recipe for the potion. But Luang Por Tien declined to take the elixir and declined to accept the recipe because in his view, to live too protracted a life was in truth a kind of sin. That one too, the children had heard before and wanted to hear again. And then there are a bunch more of these stories with the same near refrain, but I'm going to skip down a few pages. The children at that point snuggled together on a ratty cowhide rug and under a ratty Chinese blanket, suddenly sat up with their eyes homed in on him. Those in their cohort who were still asleep were jolted awake. Those still groggy were tickled at the waist, which made them jump, their eyes instantly alert. The children's faces were grubby and grimy, their clothes were grubby and grimy, but their eyes gleamed in the light of the fire. They observed Luang Por Tien's every move, leaned their ears in to catch his every word. This bhikkhu was far ripened with age, though everybody, other than he himself, was of the opinion he was the most robust looking and was in the best health of any old man they'd ever met. His hair, his eyebrows, his stubbles, and even the little strings hanging out of his nose were all white. His face was creased and sagging. He had spots and moles scattered all over his chest, his back, his shoulders, the underside of his chin. He had a tall and solid build, which evinced that in his youth he must have been exceedingly strong, though all that remained on him now was wrinkled, drooping flesh. But he still had a full set of teeth and none wobbly at all, which was a testament to the benefit of drinking one tall glass of one's own urine a day. and his eyes still gleamed in the light of the fire, and his voice was still spry and possessed of a great hint of cheeriness. He was their monk and the most senior elder of Pragnam, which made all the people revere him, and the grandness of his heart made all of them love him. Everyone, even his fellow bhikkhus, forgave him his unmonkly solecisms, one being that when he walked into the village, he didn't train his eyes restrainedly forward while looking no more than three steps ahead, as he was supposed to do under Buddhist commandments. But he rather let his eyes fall on this and that and fall much too far ahead. When a large tree on the temple's ground sprang a wayward branch, he would tote an axe and climb up and prune it himself instead of assigning a task to a novice or asking a villager to help him with it. I'm also going to skip a little bit more down. Presently, he held his head tilted back, viewing the sky, which was bright with moonlight and twinkling starlight. He spun his face toward a row of bamboo groves when a coal bird within happened to call out in its sleep. Then he lowered his eyes and peered between the toddy palms at the horizon to the east, looking as if he were waiting to catch the gold and silver lights of dawn. The winter breeze continued to rush gently, steadily through. The later the hour, the quieter the sky grew, and the quieter the land beneath it grew. The later the hour, the chillier the air felt, and the fields of Pragnam appeared ever more desolate, mysterious, and lonely, spilling sideways and rambling forth as far as the eyes could reach. Here and there, dirt mounds and scrub blocked the eye's view of the horizon, and here and there, toddy palms of different heights going up and down blocked the eye's view of the horizon. The open fields seemed to sink lower and lower, while the village, built on the plateau, seemed to rise higher and higher every time after the floods receded. It was starting to resemble an island in the sea of gold-streaked green. A gloom washed over the elderly bhikkhu and inundated his heart when he thought of the lot of the men and women and children of Pragnam. The shadow of decline and deterioration had long loomed over those fields, and that shadow seemed to be growing in size and intensity all the time now, ever since large swaths of the jungle had been destroyed, and it seemed he was the only one able to sense that omen of ruin. The mute growls of tragedy emanating from beneath the ground were as powerful as tsunamis, and it seemed he was the only one able to sense their menace. The village was about to become deserted, and that it would be deserted seemed inescapable. The natives and their children and grandchildren would one day be relegated to the position of slaves, because even in those years, rights to the land that had from time immemorial belonged to the people of Pragnam were winding up in the hands of people from elsewhere. He recognized too that before long, Pragnam could have a golf course, and the folks born in this village might end up as caddies. That Pragnam could see an outsider with capital come in and build poly houses for mushroom farming, and the folks born in this village might end up as farmhands at that complex. Or that in Pragnam vacation homes could be built around an artificial lake, with the development giving an English name like Pragnam Lakeville. And the folks born in this village might end up as landscapers or security guards of that property, the latter of which job, in his opinion, was one any mean dog could do, and do better than a person. The Pragnam could have ponds for raising barramundis, and the folks born in this village might end up as workers at those fish farms, as had already happened to the people in some of the other villages. The folks who now remained were too spiritless, made tame by despair, of which there was too much. All of them were feeble or pitiful in one way or another. They were the cursed living on cursed land. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marie. That was really beautiful. I wanted to add that I was introduced to your work through a book club that Pyrini Press did last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was fun to see that connection. And yeah, we're all looking forward to this book coming out, I guess. You know, do you have a pub date for it or?
Oh, not yet. We're still in the process of signing contracts. So,
Okay.
But this excerpt and some other part will run in the White Review in the fall.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Well, we'll keep an eye out for it. And you said The Understory was the title, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
For now, anyway, I think.
Okay, great. Well, it's something to take a note on and watch out for sure.
Thank you.
So it looks like Anton maybe won't be making it, but we can always, if he pops in at the end, we can maybe make a spot. But Bruna, I guess we'll move on to you if that's all right. So Bruna Dantas Lobato is a Brazilian writer and literary translator based in St. Louis. Her writing has appeared in a public space, Bomb, The Common, and elsewhere, and has been recognized with fellowships from Yaddo, a public space, and NYU. Translation of Fernando Abru's Moldy Strawberries received a 2019 PEN and is forthcoming from Archipelago Books this fall in September 2021. Thanks for joining us, Bruno. We were trying for a couple years, I think, to get a Brooklyn date set up. So I'm glad that we managed to get this one together.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here with Jennifer and Mui and to hear you both read. I will be reading from this forthcoming collection by Caio Fernando Abreu, Moldy Strawberries. I looked for a strawberry shirt for me to wear, but it turns out I don't have one. So, but I added that to my shopping list so I can do proper events later. I will be reading from a story called Passing Through a Great Sorrow, which will be in the volume, but also has appeared in the Canyon Review. So I'll be like one of those people who reads from the journal better than printing it out. So he says this is to be read to the soundtrack of Eric Satie. And I've enjoyed doing that, actually, listening to Satie while I translate. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Thank you. The first time the telephone rang, he didn't move. He sat there on the old yellow cushion, covered with faded shepherdesses holding flower wreaths. The colorful, flickering lights from the muted TV made the room quiver, pale under the morbid and luxurious burgundy glow of some old movie. When the phone rang again, he was trying to remember if the name of the slow, scratchy melody coming from the other room was Pleasant Despair or For a Pleasant Despair. Either way, he thought, despair and pleasant. The light from the street lamp filtered in through the lace of the curtains, bluish, mixing with the washed out color of the film. Before the phone rang a third time, he decided to get up, to check the name of the piece, he told himself, then headed to the other room, through the narrow hallway where his pants brushed against the striped leaf of a plant, as they always did. I need to find a new place for it, he thought, as he always did. And before reaching for the phone on the bookcase, he bent down over the records scattered across the floor between an overflowing ashtray and a ceramic mug, nearly empty, except for some residue at the bottom that formed a green paste, moist and dense. Des espoirs agréables, he confirmed. Standing there, he grabbed the white sleeve and put it on the table while repeating in his head, either way, despair and pleasant. Louis? The familiar voice. Hello, is that you, Louis? Here, he said. What are you up to? He sat down. Then he stretched out his arm and stared at his own palm. The spots flaking off, uric acid, they told him, slowly eating away at the skin. Hello, can you hear me? Hey, he said. I asked what you were doing. What I'm doing? Nothing. Just listening to music, watching TV. He relaxed his hand. I was about to make some coffee and go to sleep, but I'm not sure I have any left. Hello, can you speak up? What? Nothing. It's not important. And you? On the other end of the line, she sighed. There was a brief silence and then a dry click and a sort of puffing. She must have lit a cigarette, he thought. He mechanically leaned to the left to reach the ashtray full of cigarette butts and pulled it closer to the phone. What's going on? He asked slowly, looking around for a pack of cigarettes. Listen, don't you feel like taking a little walk with me? I'm tired, not really in the mood, and I have to get up early tomorrow. I'll come pick you up, then I'll drop you off. We won't be long at all. We could go to a bar, to a movie theater, to a... It's after 10, he said. Her voice got a bit shrill. Then come to me. You don't want that either, do you? I have this great vodka, the best. You will love it. Haven't even opened it yet. Only thing missing is the lime. Will you bring one? Her voice was suddenly so shrill he had to hold the phone away from his ear. For a moment, he just listened to the distant melody of a piano, slow and scratchy. Through the glass door panes, with the light shining out back, he could see the tops of the green plants in the garden, scattered yellow leaves on the ground. Unconsciously, he almost shivered in the chill air, or from a kind of fear. He rubbed the dry palm of his left hand against his thigh. Her voice sounded normal again. And what if I went over there? His fingers brushed against the pack of cigarettes in his back pocket. He held the phone pressed between his shoulder and his face as he slowly pulled out the pack. It's just, he said, Louis? He held one of the cigarettes between his teeth. He bit it softly. Hello, Louis, are you still there? He lit the cigarette, holding the phone even tighter against his shoulder, and he almost dropped the receiver. He took a deep drag, then grabbed the phone again and slowly relaxed his sore shoulder as he exhaled the smoke. I was about to go to bed, he said. What's this music in the background? She suddenly asked. He pulled the ashtray closer, then turned the record in his hands. It's called For a Pleasant Despair, he lied. Do you like it? I don't know. It makes me a little sleepy. Who is it? He tapped his cigarette on the rim of the ashtray 3 times, but no ashes fell off. Some guy, a lunatic. What's his name? Eric Satie, he said softly. She didn't hear it. Louis, hello? Louis? Yeah. Am I pissing you off? Again, he heard the brief silence, the dry click, the soft puffing. She must have lit another cigarette, he thought. No, he said. Am I pissing you off? Sorry. Am I annoying you? Same thing. Tell me. I know I am. It's fine. I wasn't really doing anything. I can't sleep, she said faintly. Are you already in bed? Yeah, reading. Then I felt like talking to you. He took a deep drag. While he exhaled the smoke, he bent down again to pick up the ceramic mug. He dragged his finger against the bottom, then nibbled on the small leaves with his front teeth. What were you reading? He asked. Nothing. Some article in a magazine. Something about monocultures and sprays. What? Huh? What was it about? She coughed, then seemed to cheer up a bit. Stuff like that, ecologies. Apparently, if you keep growing the same thing in the soil for many years, it will end up dying. The soil, not the thing, of course. Soy, for example, and eucalyptus too, it seems. It destroys the organic matter. Then slowly it all becomes desert. They become isolated dots, empty, deserted, scattered all over the planet. The record stopped, but he didn't move. After a moment, it started over again. Like when you spill drops of ink on a piece of paper, they spread more and more. They end up meeting each other, you know? The desert gets bigger, each time bigger. Deserts never stop growing. Did you know that? I did, he said. Horrible, isn't it? And the sprays? What? The sprays. What's wrong with the sprays? Oh, yeah, I saw it in the same magazine. It said that each time you spray deodorant, not just deodorant, anything, you know, it creates this thing. Oh, how can I say it? A hole, you know what I mean? A leak, a hole in the layer. What's it called? The ozone layer, he said. Right, the ozone layer, the air we breathe, you know, the biosphere. It must look like a sieve by now then, he said. What? It must look like a sieve, he repeated slowly. The layer, the biosphere, the ozone. Can you imagine how horrible? Did you know that? Hello, Louis, are you there? I am. I think I got kind of horrified is all, she said. And scared. Aren't you scared, Louis? I'm tired. On the other end of the line, she laughed. From the sound, he guessed that she laughed without really opening her mouth, just shaking her shoulders, shaking her head from side to side, a strand of hair falling over her eyes. Am I keeping you? She asked. You always say I'm keeping you, like you're some property I saw and liked, a house. If I were a house, I'd be one with a pool in the back, a huge garden, and air conditioning. What kind of house would you like to be, Louis? I wouldn't be a house. What? I'd like to be an apartment. All right, but what kind? He sighed. A studio with no phone. What? Hello, Louis? Were you really not planning on doing anything tonight? Tea. I was about to make myself some tea. Wasn't it coffee you said? I thought you said you were going to make coffee. There's no powder left. He shook the ashtray full of cigarette butts. Some specks of ash fell out on the white cover of the record with the abstract drawing in the middle. Carefully, he collected them in a pile over the purple corner of the main picture. No filters either. And I just remembered I have this amazing tea. It even came with a crazy list of uses and side effects. You want to see it? I left it in here. He opened his black address book. Tea doesn't come with prescribing information, she said. She sounded annoyed, like a child. Prescribing information is for medication. It does. This tea does. Do you want to see it? Between two faded Polaroids on the back cover, he found the yellow piece of paper folded in four. Louis, you really don't want to come over, you know? She laughed again, and this time he imagined her with her mouth open wide, slowly running the tip of her tongue over her lips, chapped from all the smoking. I think I was just a bit shaken by that story with all the deserts, the holes. Louis, do you think the world is ending? He unfolded the yellow piece of paper on the table next to the two pictures. The dark wood of the table had some lighter spots. One of the pictures showed a woman who was almost beautiful, with her hair up and gold earrings shaped like tiny roses. The other was the face of a man wearing a black V-neck, his face resting on one hand, a mild misalignment in his dark eyes. Not to mention the nuclear power plants, he said, and with the tip of his fingers, he dragged a little pile of ashes on the purple corner over the twisted shapes, brown, yellow, green, to the white part, and finally to the face of the man in the picture. Louis, she called out, did you find the tea thing? I found it. You're acting strange. What is it? Nothing. I'm tired. That's all. Do you want to hear what the leaflet says? It's in English. You understand some of it, right? She didn't answer. He went ahead and read it dramatically. Is excellent for all types of nervous disorders, paranoia, schizophrenia, drug effects, digestive problems, hormonal disease, and order disorders. I've been trying to get a hold of this tea, but apparently it doesn't exist. But it would be amazing. He laughed, softly enjoying himself. Did you understand it? I did, she said. It's an easy kind of English. Anyone can understand it. Impressive, this tea, isn't it? Is it English? He continued laughing. Chinese. On the bottom here, it says made in China. With the ashes, he covered the man's misaligned eye. Drug effects is really great, isn't it? Amazing, she said. That record is playing again. I've already heard this part. It's because it all sounds the same like that, like rain. I think I'll turn on the radio. Good. Look for a dreamlike song. Now he spread the ashes over the nose, where the eyebrows met, thick. Then you will doze off and off. Then you're asleep, almost unconsciously. All right, she said. All right, he repeated. And he thought that when they began talking like this, it was already time to hang up, though he didn't want to be the first to do it. I'll get it out tomorrow, she said suddenly. What are you talking about? Nothing. Go make your tea. I'm hanging up. Have you turned on the radio? Not yet. What's the name of that piece again? For a Pleasant Despair, he lied again, then corrected himself. No, it's just Pleasant Despair. Pleasant? Yes, pleasant. Why not? It's funny. Despair is never pleasant. Sometimes it is. Cocaine, for example. Is that all you think about? No, I think about making myself some tea as well. Huh? But the one that's playing now is different. Listen. He held the receiver in the air for a moment, facing the speakers. They're all very similar, just the piano, nothing else. The ashes on the photo covered the young man's entire face. This one is called À l'occasion d'une grande peine. Right, it's French, right. Pain, sorrow, not pain, a great sorrow. Occasion just means occasion, but it could be passing through. Better, isn't it? Passing through feels like it's already leaving you, that it's almost over. What do you think? I'll see if I can sleep now, she yawned. French, English, Chinese tea. You're very cosmopolitan today. Escapism, he said, and lit another cigarette. It's a shame you don't want to go out. I'm thinking I might open that bottle of vodka anyway. Before bed, he asked. Have some warm milk. It helps you sleep. And some cinnamon and honey. Sugar is bad for you. Bad? Look who's talking. Do as I say, not as I. The ashes were going down his neck, getting mixed up in the black of his shirt. Her voice sounded a bit ironic, almost fierce. Oh, now you decide you want to take care of me. I'll go make my tea, he said. What was it again? Schizophrenia? It's schizophrenia. The stress goes on the E at the end. There's a C, H, then there's also a P, another H. There are two H's. And no Y's, no W's, she asked, as if exhausted and bitter. I love the Y's and W's and K's, so chic. D'accord, he said, but there aren't any. Okay, she laughed listlessly, then said bye, see you, good night, kisses, and hung up. He opened his mouth, but before he said anything, he heard the click of the phone on the hook on the other side of town. The record was ending again, but before it started over, he leaned forward and turned off the stereo. Standing there by the table, he crumpled the yellow piece of paper and threw it in the ashtray. Then he blew the ashes from the man's face. A few specks fell on the picture of the woman. He then walked into the narrow hallway, bent over the plant, and with the ember of his cigarette, he made a hole in the leaf. He took a deep breath, no smell in the chill air. The room was still under that burgundy shade, dull, stagnant, with the old yellow cushions shining in the dark, strangely greenish now in the blue street light. He gestured toward the telephone. He even took one step forward as if he were about to go back, but he didn't move. Standing still in the middle of the house like this, no music playing, he could hear the wind running loose through the tiles of the roof. Thank you. I think I went way over. Sorry about that.
That's all right. We had time to kill.
No problem at all.
That last scene was so wonderful. All those colors, beginning with the burgundy.
I
Really,
know,
really
right?
wonderful.
I'm a big fan of
Perfectly
this
set up.
author.
Yeah.
Like I want a cigarette now. And I don't even smoke.
Me neither. And this is, I should just say, this was written in the 80s, and it's exciting for me to see that it feels kind of timeless, talking about the apocalypse and, climate change.
Yeah, Bruno, I was actually going to ask, when it was written, not because it felt stuck to a particular time, but just because of the kind of like vigor of the telephone dialogue. This is something that, I don't know, all of us, at least on this call, I think at some point in our lives, remember overhearing adults talking and talking and talking, and partly because we're more isolated right now because of the pandemic, but I also I wonder sometimes about that. It's so much a part of our, I don't know, early development, hearing people on the telephone, even in movies, like telephone scenes. So did you feel like you were kind of in something familiar but unfamiliar too when you were working on it with all the telephone stuff?
Yeah, no, it feels, there are many things that make it feel dated. The landlines, for sure. There are landlines galore and no cell phones. But I am a big phone person myself. I live in Missouri, landlocked, isolated from everyone I know. So I'm always on the phone, and I love translating dialogue. I think I translated 5 or 6 long phone calls for this book. And that was perfect for me. Like, if I could do dialogue alone in my own writing, I'm like that too. I could. Yeah, but definitely the way there's this innocence in the way they talk. And then there's all this vintage ephemera, their excitement about drugs. It all feels very 1984 when it was written. And also the obsession with escapism. It was during the military dictatorship in Brazil, and also during the AIDS crisis. He mentions that his losing some skin on his hand because of high levels of uric acid. That's probably because the character is HIV positive, as many of his characters are. Yeah, so there definitely feels like I'm in a certain time period where things looked dark in a different way.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. This was great.
We had a question from Jennifer. She says, thank you everyone for reading, such great voices. And the question for the readers, anyone can chime in, is how much is reading aloud part of your translating or writing process? Like reading your own work aloud, it could be reading the source text aloud. What do you folks think about that?
It's not me who asked the question, it's another Jennifer.
Different Jennifer, same world. Yeah, same Zoom call.
I felt like I loved that phone scene because it brought me back to the analog world. Just having a phone, I can answer quickly that in preparation for this reading, this translation I'm doing is very new. I've just started it a few months ago, and I read aloud a part that I'd polished, and I made so many changes from reading aloud. So for me, reading aloud always is in my own work hugely important, because to put it in my body and in my throat and to try to say those words, I learn a lot about. And with translation, you trip over things that don't feel right. So I think it's a really crucial part.
Oh boy, I think you're muted still, moving.
Yeah, more than 1 year in, and I never learned. Okay, yes, yeah. So I also read aloud the draft that I think is like pre-proofreading. Like Jennifer, I find that when I trip over a sentence, it really helps to sort of like work out those kinks. Even though I find it really exhausting to read out loud because it's not something that comes very naturally to me. So sometimes I'm like, am I just saying it badly, or is the sentence not working? So it's kind of a little, yeah, but I do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I do too. For both for translation and for my own writing. And I just finished writing my very first novel manuscript. I'm still in a way working on it, but finished the bulk of it. And I knew that some things were wrong, slightly off, or didn't gel. So I gave myself like 6 hours to read it out loud from cover to cover. And oh, did I hear the mistakes very loud. So that was incredibly helpful. I would just like basically put a paper clip on the page or bookmark it. And then I came back to it, fix it, then needed another 6 hours to read it again. And it was very, very tiring. Like my mouth was dry. My whole body was like, I should just go to bed now. But I need that. And then I went over the proofs from Archipelago for this Abreu collection. And then I felt I wasn't going to read the whole thing out loud. I'm like, it's fine. I've read it so many times. And then I was struck with the feeling that if I read my own book out loud more than once, that then I had to do this for this other person's book too, right? So that's what I did. I read the whole book out loud again, and I'm like, no. Yeah, terrible. It is a miserable thing, a part of the process, but I can't see myself being satisfied with the book without it.
Yeah, Bruno, that's a really interesting experience of seeing how your own writing practice like immediately informed either the project you were working on or the next project. I think we've all kind of felt that, seeing it reflected, Well, we're just about at 6, so I guess we'll wrap up here. Thank you all so much for tuning in, panelists and attendees. We're really happy to have people in the audience listening, and I hope that these books, when they come out there in the world, find readers maybe that are on this call. Find listeners and they become readers. So that's all for now. You can follow us, or you can find us on at usandthemreading.com, where we keep the posters and everything. And hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Maybe in person.
Yeah, maybe even in person. Yeah, but hopefully, I don't know. Maybe sometime this year we'll be able to do one. But we have our tools now, so we can be flexible, I guess. All right. Everyone good? Okay. All right.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks so much. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye.